Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation about IKEA, a strategic analysis. My name is Adrian Garza, and today's date is November 27th, 2016. To begin with, a brief overview. I will be introducing the company, followed by a strategic profile, an external situational analysis, an internal situational analysis, and then I'll be performing a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, followed by a five forces analysis, and then I'll go into strategy formulation, strategic alternative implementation, suggestions, and finally the conclusion. To begin with, IKEA is a privately owned company in the Netherlands, even though it was founded in Sweden. It was started in 1943 by Ingvar Kamprad, and it is currently the world's largest furniture company. They design and sell ready-to-assemble furniture, home appliances, and accessories for modern homes, and they are present in at least 44 countries and they employ over 139,000 people all over the world. Recently, IKEA has spent 1 year lobbying the Indian government to set up stores in India, and that was finally accepted in May 2nd of 2013. They are also owned by the Inca Holding BV, and they are a private for-profit Dutch company, and this holding prevents the Kamprad family from infighting or selling off the company. This was something that Ingvar was very adamant on. He did not want the company to sell off any portion of it or start fighting over inheritance. He wanted the company to stay the same for the rest of time. Now, a strategic profile about IKEA and India. The Indian population prefers locally owned and supplied unique furniture. They enjoy having handcrafted furniture and not big box furniture. So there's a high level of uncertainty as to how the population may or may not respond well to big box furniture stores such as IKEA. Another issue is places, and it's urban versus suburban. And there's a mid-level uncertainty due to real estate prices, car ownership, and road conditions. The real estate prices are a lot more expensive in urban places around India, but it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier for the population to get to. Whereas in the suburban areas, the real estate is a lot cheaper, but many people do not own cars or the roads are in very bad conditions and they are not capable of getting to IKEA to buy the furniture. Um, Along with that, we also have some activities such as the government lobbying, and there's a low level of uncertainty there due to the Indian government cooperating very much with outside trading in order to increase Indian GDP. And some contexts, there's been an immense growth potential in India, and there's almost no uncertainty there. The GDP in India has been on the rise for over a decade, well since after it became an independent state. Now, the SWOT analysis, some of the strengths of IKEA. It's a big brand name. It's very well known. It's very famous, very popular. They have a strong organizational structure. They've been in place for several decades, and they know exactly how to run their business and what their structure looks like. They also have comparatively low prices to some of the other manufacturers. Since the furniture is built by the person that's buying it, IKEA is able to save some money on labor and therefore offer the furniture at cheaper prices. Some of the weaknesses, IKEA will have some difficulty adjusting to the Indian market. They're not used to these sort of big box companies, um, and they also require large amounts of real estate space. Most spaces are 300,000 or more square feet, and that's not a very feasible thing in urban India. And they believe that that might be on the small end of the size of the store that they would need there. So it would be very costly, and it might not work out well the with the way that India usually gets their furniture. Some opportunities that they have a flourishing Indian economy. Like I said earlier, the GDP is on the rise. The Indian government is trying to cooperate with them. Everybody seems to want to make this happen. And they appeal to middle-income, trendy urbanites. A lot of the Indian population, they're starting to get a lot younger. There's more money. The GDP is on the rise. And a lot of these people want to live a more international lifestyle within India. And that means new, trendy furniture, nicer apartments. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. Some threats, the government does want them to come in, but they want them to come in under Indian government rules and under IKEA's rules, and so there is some opposition there. They also have the local retail stores, and that's what the Indian people know. It's what the Indian people like and have been purchasing for hundreds of years, and so there's not really a lot of leeway there. They really have to try to appeal to these middle income urbanites and hope that they can branch out from there to some of these other people that are accustomed to the local retail stores. And they also have a business model breakup, and that's even though they do have a very strong organizational structure, that might not work for India, and so they may need to break that up and create a brand new business model specifically for this Indian market. Now, the external situational analysis, we have the economic, and that's the global furniture market is expected to reach $436.5 billion in 2015, and the Indian estimated portion of that is around 900 billion rupees, and that's about 13.2 billion US dollars, or 3% of the global market. And that's a fairly significant share for just one country. Some political and legal situations that they might encounter. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, is forbidden until 2011 for multi-brand retail, and up to 51% in a single brand retail. So what that means is a company such as Walmart that's coming in and bringing in several brands and trying to retail them, that sort of investment is forbidden. But a company such as IKEA, they can have a 51% stake in whatever their uh, in whatever furniture they're trying to push in order to be allowed there. But FDI reforms in 2012 allow IKEA 100% FDI as a single brand retailer, and that was something that they have been going back and forth on in India, and that could change back at any time. But as of right now, IKEA has 10 years to try to comply with the 51% in the single brand retail market. Otherwise, the laws may revert back, and IKEA may have to abandon their endeavors in India. Um, Sociocultural and demographic, the population as a whole prefers custom-made furniture, and there's a potential niche found in the middle-class urbanites looking for an international lifestyle, like I said before. Um, Global, there's an increased value in elegance items beyond tables, chairs, and beds. Um, things such as throw rugs, lamps, pillows, things of that nature. People are looking for more than just um, practical use furniture. They want extravagance, they want elegance, um, and physical. Unfortunately, got cut off here, but the physical, the real estate market in India is very expensive, and so the actual physical locations of the stores might be a problem for them as well. On internal situational analysis, some of the strengths of IKEA, they are privately owned by a large corporation network, and that compartmentalizes the company means that there's a minimal threat to take over from any outside sources or from any internal sources as well. They also have a competitive pricing structure, and they self-design all of their furniture. Um, they don't outsource the furniture design. They have engineers and stylists within the company who make all of that. They also have a broad manufacturing network. Like I said earlier, they're based out of 44 countries, and the majority of that base, they create the furniture somewhere within the nation or a neighboring nation, and then it doesn't have to be shipped internationally. It'll just cross maybe one country border or be be shipped within the nation itself. And they have a very cut and paste global model. It seems that their model tends to work in most places that they go, and so they might they might take the same design they do for the States or for China, and they can set those designs in any other country in the world, Japan, Russia, Germany, and just make small little nuance changes to fit the host country itself. Some of the weaknesses of IKEA, they have large buildings with convoluted layouts. Like I said earlier, the smallest building that they have runs around 300,000 square feet. They can run all the way up to 650,000 square feet. And a lot of that, IKEA is not made to just sort of walk around and do a little eye candy shopping or window shopping here and there. They have a very set path that you follow to get through the store, and you almost have to walk through the entire store to get from one end to the other. It's not as if you can go to one specific place and say, I want a pillow, and go and look at pillows. You have to go through the entire store in order to see all the pillows, as opposed to being sectionalized. And that can make things a little convoluted because you can't just go to one place and see something. You have to walk through the entire store in order to see everything to see something. There's also little to no product deviation, and there's no room for customization. Um, the same product that they sell in Sweden is going to be the same product that they sell in Japan, that they sell in the United States and Canada. It's going to be the exact same name. The most that you might find is a different color or something of that nature, but there's very little product deviation. They'll have a 100% renewable energy initiative, and while this is a great thing for the environment, some host countries may not be able to abide by this, and that's been one of the biggest setbacks for IKEA, is that many of the host countries do not have these sort of initiatives, or they do not have anything that assists IKEA in making their stores 100% renewable energy. And just as the strengths was a cut and paste global model, weakness is also the cut and paste global model. There hasn't been a lot of deviation, and so we're not really sure how well IKEA can take their model and move it to a host country that doesn't fit their cut and paste global model. They have to create some sort of deviation for India, and we're not sure how well that can translate to the Indian market. So the five forces analysis, we have the new entrance threat, and that's fairly high because as of right now, the relaxed government regulations allow for several competitors to enter the market. So IKEA is looking at a lot of competition from people or from companies trying to enter this new market. Like I said, it's a 3% growth um, just in India, and there's very little already there. So a lot of companies are really trying to break into that market. Along with that, the supplier power right now is currently very high because the cooperation required for these incoming businesses to continue to work as well as continued use of current business models of the buyers. And essentially, what that means is, um, in order to have a locally sourced product, all these different companies need to work with the local supplier network, and they can basically control who they will give their time and resources and efforts to, and that can really sway what companies flourish and what companies fail. So they hold a lot of power right now in this market. As far as the buy power, that would be IKEA and IKEA's competitors. They have very minimal power, and that's because of so many entrants coming into the market, as well as strict government regulations. I know I said earlier that they're relaxed, but as of right now, they're relaxed. Any time to revert back to the strict regulations, and that would take almost all power out of the buyer's hands. And so without a good supplier network, that could their minimum power could be non-existent whatsoever. And substitute products, it's pretty low. There's not a lot of substitute. A lot of furniture is required in a household. I mean, there's not a lot of substitutes for chairs, beds, and tables. I mean, you can use boxes and milk crates and things like that, but that's only going to get you so far for so long. Eventually, you do need to buy a table and chairs and a couch and things of that nature. And the current rivalry right now, any company that's coming in, they're not so much being rivaled by each other; they're being rivaled by the local carpenters and furniture makers. But there is some competition from these incoming competitors that are hoping to gain market standing. So the strategy formulation, my first strategy was if they did not enter the market, if they stayed out of the Indian market entirely. Some of the advantages, they don't need to break up their current corporate model. They can avoid the red tape and bureaucratic nuances, all this political lobbying, things of that nature. They can just be done with it, focus on other markets, and not have to worry about this. Just focus on the markets that they're already in and how to expand those while other companies are trying to expand into the Indian market. Some of the disadvantages of this, they obviously have the loss of the potential market share and profit from the Indian market, and they could potentially lose suppliers from other local markets such as China, Japan, and the Arabian Peninsula. Um, a lot of these supplier networks already exist, and so it wouldn't be as difficult to open up shop in India because they do have some locally owned suppliers already in the area that could kind of help for a smooth transition. So they could lose a lot of that. They could lose a lot of potential just within that local supplier chain. My second strategy formulation was keeping the current business model and just cutting and pasting it to the Indian market. Um, some of the advantages is a tried and true business model. They know exactly what they're getting themselves into, and it's very easy to implement it internally. Since it's already been established in 44 countries around the world. It's very simple for them to just take it and move it to this new country and be done with it on their part. Some of the disadvantages of that, though, the Indian market may not accept this current structure. They might not like the business model. They might not like the business structure, um, and that could really cause a rift especially if they're going to invest a lot into the real estate market to get their stores up and running. The governance may also revert back, which would disavow their current structure. That would completely cripple them. It'd just be a waste of resources, a waste of money, a waste of time. As well as the real estate in the urban sites is very expensive and it's not conducive to the current floor plan. But the real estate in the suburban sites are less expensive and harder to get to. So that's a real conundrum in and of itself. Trying to figure out where these shops should go. And they also have a little bit of a difficulty in the supplier chain because the supplier chain does not work really well with the current business model. And they do have local supplier chains in some other host countries, but eventually they do want to set up an Indian supplier chain um, if the local market grows at levels that they hope and expect them to. So they might they might end up being a little bit handcuffed there if they keep their current business model. The third strategy formulation was changing their current business model in order to fit the Indian market. Some of the advantages of that would be more adaptive of the Indian marketplace, of course, and it might be accepted better by the local bureaucrats and consumers. I said earlier that the Indian market, they prefer handcrafted furniture, locally made, and so working with a local supplier chain, making a lot of these products in the country, they might find a little bit more acceptance from the Indian people, and they would also ease the floor plan implementation. Um, and what I mean by the floor plan implementation was creating a less convoluted structure within their stores. If they were to change that a little bit and make it less convoluted, a little bit smaller, they could save some space, they could save on the real estate expenses, and they could focus more on supplying a smaller number of products to a large number of people, and just see which products are better to fit um, within the local market. Some of the disadvantages of that: this is a very unknown structure and business model to them. They've never had to change it for another country. There's never been changes at this level, and so that could be very trying for them. And that also means that the implementation is going to be very uneasy for them. They don't really have any leaders or managers who are capable of this, and so they have to look outside of their own business culture and organizational structure in order to find the leaders who are capable of implementing this sort of business model. And my strategic alternative implementation is to change the business model and go into the Indian market. Steps to implementation: they could hire local market experts. This would help with transition into the market analyzation, and they can also work with the local suppliers to potentially create aftermarket customization. What I mean by that is they could have some kind of a plan to build the furniture for the people, but then have some sort of work with some of the local crafters to sell them the products, have them put them together, and then create a little bit of a difference between each product. You know, they could on some of the wood parts they could do some custom carvings. On the upholstery, they could have some custom colors, a little bit of customization there, kind of tailor it a little bit more to the Indian market, and have a third party intermediary there to sell off some of the furniture, but still be selling it to uh, these small business owners. Um, I think they should also select smaller suburban store locations, and that's because economizing the space and not having to spend large money on real estate would help with the advertising. They could buy delivery trucks. They could help. They could help and donate to the local governments to make better roads and better infrastructure around the city to kind of help get their products from one place to another, and that would go a long way with the people in the Indian marketplace, because they would see that, you know, they're not just trying to sell them furniture; they're also trying to create a better lifestyle for them. And along with that, the small suburban store locations, they could economize their floor space. As I touched on earlier, they could cut down some of the convoluted aspects of their current store model, and they can adapt to the current Indian marketplace and be more accepting. And that would be more accepting of the government. They wouldn't face as much opposition. Um, they could also allow for a one-time, non-100% renewable energy model. The Indian market isn't really conducive to this. It's a very polluted country. There's a lot of there's not a lot of renewable energy efforts there. And what they could do, they could enter the market with lower energy allowance and gain market share, and then as time goes on, slowly transition to a more renewable energy model, um, and eventually get to the 100% mark that they like to be. Uh, but in light of this, IKEA must also keep its anti-corruption policies in an effort to stay out of potential ethical dilemmas. IKEA is currently one of a few countries that has anti-corruption policies. They don't take any sorts of bribes or anything like that, and whenever they do, they usually shut down operations or move operations, because they don't want to be involved in these political battles. They'd like to stay out of it, keep their noses clean, and just sell furniture. So, some of my conclusions: it is beneficial for IKEA to enter this market, but they do to change their business model and structure in order to do this. They also need to adapt to the Indian governments and socio-cultural issues through local market efforts. And I believe that this would also help create a management chain that is conducive to these new models. And they need to keep their anti-corruption policies, as well as their renewable energy initiatives, but they need to 100% keep their anti-corruption policies, but they need to have some sort of a project effort, whether it be 5 years or 10 years, to get the store to a 100% renewable energy model, and take progressive steps in order to get there, without uh, without hurting their own image in the meantime. And they also need to have some sort of aftermarket customization chain in order to appeal to a broader market of customers, such as the locals who don't want things to change, do want to keep their local suppliers and their customized and their one-of-a-kind customized furniture. Thank you for watching my presentation. Again, my name is Adrian Garza, and I would like to give a special thanks to Dr. Michael Knight and Texas A&M Kingsville for allowing me the opportunity to present this project. Thank you very much.